A window into the future of Taiwan, darkened by bullets and flames of war, Washington is okaying a new $440 million arms sale to the island. It's part of an even greater effort to boost its defenses, with over $1 billion in deals greenlit this year. What's driving the urgency? And are the actions turning Taiwan into a dangerous powder keg, as Beijing claims? What do you think? Let us know below, and subscribe if you haven't already. Welcome to China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. A powder keg or a porcupine? The world's two biggest superpowers are exchanging spats over a heated issue. What should the future of Taiwan look like? And will fighter jets, warships, and bullets decide the ultimate answer? On Thursday, the U.S. State Department okayed a new arms sales to the Democratic Island worth $440 million. And that's just part of a weapons deal for the island, valued at over $1 billion this year alone. The latest package includes ammunition, plus spare parts for vehicles and weapons, among other things. The island's weapons buildup is part of Washington's so-called Porcupine strategy. The goal, to raise the cost and expected losses to China should it decide to invade, similar to previous talks of including Taiwan under the U.S. nuclear umbrella.
There's much to do there in a very short period of time to strengthen Taiwan's ability to offer a conventional deterrent to China and to begin to operate under the American nuclear security umbrella as well.
Back in the U.S., Congress has been calling for increased funding for Taiwan's defense. That's amid a rising sense of urgency. On Friday, 11 Chinese aircraft crossed the median line of the Taiwan Strait, the unofficial barrier between the two sides. They were among a total of 24 Chinese fighter jets and bombers spotted near the island, with an additional 5 Chinese battleships deployed nearby. So, is an invasion imminent? And where does Washington stand? Taiwan's foreign minister says the island is preparing for a conflict with China in 2027.
Our defense ministry is very determined in defending ourselves, and we will fight the war if we need to fight the war.
In the U.S., Secretary of Defense Lloyd Austin warned China against the possibility of war at a forum earlier this month.
But make no mistake, conflict in the Taiwan Strait would be devastating.
The Chinese regime claims Taiwan as its own territory, despite never having ruled the island. It has vowed to annex Taiwan by force if necessary. Dan Harris, a legal counsel for U.S. companies doing business in China, says the idea of war over Taiwan worries his clients more than anything else.
I always say the most common question I'm asked is, what about the Taiwan risk? Is China going to invade Taiwan? And I think it almost scares them too much.
But what would the U.S. actually do if China invaded? The answer remains unclear. On Wednesday, Secretary of State Antony Blinken was grilled about a remark he made earlier in Beijing.
We do not support Taiwan independence.
The comment seemingly disconnected with President Biden's view. Here's what he said when asked in a previous CBS interview broadcast.
But would U.S. forces defend the island?
Yes, if in fact there was an unprecedented attack.
So why is it worthwhile for Americans to defend Taiwan? Experts say politically, the island helps keep peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. Economically, Taiwan is one of Washington's most important trading partners, largely because of its microchip-making sector. And culturally, Taiwanese citizens share a common goal with Americans, maintaining a free and fair democracy. A recent poll found 64% of American voters want the U.S. to recognize Taiwan's independence. China's passing of the measure has sent chills through Westerners living in China, from scholars to business leaders and journalists. What's unnerving a lot of people is that the new law expands the scope of what Beijing considers espionage, but without clearly defining terms. It bans people from transferring any information related to national security. That means accessing any documents, data, or materials related to national security could be considered espionage. The law also hands Chinese authorities greater power. they can block suspects from leaving China. They can also search suspects' bags, electronic devices, and property. The concern is, with the law being so vague, normal business activities and news gathering could now be considered criminal acts. Normal actions, such as collecting intelligence on local markets and business competitors, may no longer be safe. Reactions are pouring in. That includes from the heads of the two largest business groups in China, the European Chamber of Commerce and the American Chamber of Commerce. In an interview with Nikkei Asia, the head of the EU Commerce Chamber asked, what is it that we are supposed to comply with? What constitutes a state secret? What kind of information is it that we're not supposed to have? China recently raided the China-based offices of two American firms, Capvision and Mintz. Another U.S. consulting giant, Bain & Company, said Chinese police questioned staff at its Shanghai office. Western reporters in China are also looking at how the law would affect their work. A reporter told VOA that quite a few of them are worried about what it is and what it might mean. Beijing has detained dozens of foreigners on espionage charges. Examples include Michael Spavor, a Canadian consultant, Michael Kovrig, a former Canadian diplomat, and Australian TV news anchor Cheng Lei. Just this May, China sentenced a 78-year-old American citizen to life in prison. The charge is related to spying, but Chinese authorities did not give details. Unauthorized vapes are entering the United States. The number has nearly tripled since 2020, driven almost entirely from China. What's the latest status on America's drug war? And what role does China play? We hear from concerned parents for more.
Every single device, unless it has been authorized by FDA, and only a handful have been, and none of them flavored. So any flavored e-cigarette that you see in a vape shop or online or at a gas station, that is not a regulated product.
In the past 3 years, the number of electronic cigarette devices sold in the U.S. has nearly tripled, with the exact number sitting at over 9,000, and the majority of them are unauthorized disposable vapes from China.
Those flavored products like Elf Bar that are flooding the market from China, they're illegal to sell in China. And that's because the Chinese government made it very clear they wanted to protect Chinese kids from nicotine addiction. So those brands like Elf Bar basically have exploited our own regulatory loopholes and postponements and failures.
Once a niche market, cheaper disposable made up 40% of the e-cigarette retail market last year. Most disposables mirror a few major brands, but there's a catch. Companies copy each other's designs, blurring the line between the real and counterfeit. Next is send logos and flavor requests to Chinese manufacturers, who then promise to deliver tens of thousands of devices within weeks.
Many of these products come in gummy bear and chocolate and butter rum flavors that we know to be highly appealing to non-smoking teenagers, and they have very high nicotine levels and therefore are potently addictive.
Those products then circulate in the American market.
And addiction is a wonderful business model because you buy their product over and over and over again throughout your somewhat shortened life. And they know very well the only way they get new customers is to go after the teenagers. Because if you don't get them when they're teens, you're not going to get them.
Now, regulators must now somehow claw back thousands of illegal products sold by under-the-radar Chinese importers and distributors. Adding to the challenge, foreign manufacturers of the pre-filled devices don't have to register with the FDA, giving regulators little visibility into a sprawling industry centered in China's Shenzhen manufacturing center. Under pressure from politicians and parents, the FDA recently sent warning letters to more than 200 stores selling popular disposables. The agency also issued orders blocking imports from 3 brands, but dozens of others have been left untouched.
$3 trillion in stock, with another $3 trillion hidden in China's pocket. According to Brad Setzer, a former U.S. Trade and Treasury official, China currently holds a total of $6 trillion in its foreign exchange reserves. But half of those funds are not recorded in the official books of the central bank. Instead, this money is stored by state commercial lenders and policy banks. Setzer says that the regime's lack of transparency will eventually bring negative impacts to the rest of the world, given the size of its economy. These reserves played a major role in the Belt and Road Initiative. The ambitious infrastructure program is known to help spread Beijing's influence across the globe. Setzer says that the regime's efforts to diversify foreign exchange holdings helped develop the project. The official number of China's total reserves has remained static over the last few years, but the invisible amount has likely spiked along with China's export surplus. Tensions between China and the U.S. are soaring, raising fears of a real-life World War Z. China's military is responding with a major addition to its weapons testing, and the risk of armed conflict with the U.S. now reaching record levels. Chinese Navy scientists designated the doomsday scenario with the letter Z, introducing a total war model. Under it, all of the nation's resources are mobilized. Traditionally, China's weapons evaluations have focused on regional conflicts, like interventions around Taiwan or in the South China Sea. But this total war scenario takes things up a notch. Although the CCP hasn't formally named a target, researcher Fang Canxing from China's People's Liberation Army referenced the U.S. Navy's Arleigh-Burke-class destroyer, plus U.S. allies referred to as the Blue Alliance. This new dimension in China's military strategy underscores the heightened risk of conflict. That threat, now rated 7 out of 10 by officials. Helped along by Beijing's narrative, Chinese society views sanctions and U.S. military operations as deliberate roadblocks meant to hinder China's development. So while some have suggested the possibility of an all-out conflict, influential figures in Chinese society have called for a more calm approach to avoid catastrophic consequences. China's premier struck a bullish tone on the world's second-largest economy Tuesday, saying the country is still on track to reach its annual GDP growth target. But widespread concerns form a stark contrast. Can China's economy rebound from the nation's harsh pandemic lockdowns? An expert breaks it down.
An almost 21% unemployment rate, dramatically declining exports, and plunging consumption rates. Any of these problems alone could drag down a country's economy. But all three are hitting today's China. Despite that, the country's premier told investors and other leaders that the Chinese economy is doing well and finished the first quarter with a 4.5% growth, adding that the second quarter will see an even higher marker.
We are on track to reach the annual economic growth target of around 5%, which was set at the beginning of the year.
Frank Xie, an American professor who has studied Chinese economy for over 2 decades, shared his opinion on these remarks.
I think Chinese economy is going to decline tremendously, even go back 20 years. The leadership of Chinese Communist government, of course, that's almost their second nature. They just lie and they try to deceive, to lure Western investment into China. That's what they have always been telling the world, that it's growing, it's great, come invest, and bring money in and bring technology.
3 years of COVID-19-driven lockdowns heavily disrupted supply chains in China and drove many foreign companies away, spurring them to find cheaper and more stable manufacturing lines in Mexico, India, and Vietnam. It also directly impacted China's exports. In the post-pandemic era, Chinese people seem to be saving their money for a rainy day. Official data shows car, home, and tourism sales have dropped, even compared to the same time last year, when sales surged after Beijing lifted lockdown orders. Both China's consumption and exports, 2 major contributors to GDP, have shown the weakness. Running contrary to the premier's statements.
The prosperity or the wealth built over the last 20 years was a result of China's accession into WTO, World Trade Organization, with the U.S. and European opening their markets to the Chinese manufacturers. Right? But that, as we said, just discussed, that is over.
A new descriptor, black hole, has been used to characterize investments thrown into China's current market. It reflects the dramatic drop in foreign interest in the country. Wall Street financial giants also trimmed their full-year China GDP growth forecasts. On the other hand, the Biden administration aims to bring on a thaw U.S.-China relations.
The Biden administration is still spending a lot of money. It's spending like crazy. And they want to borrow money. They want to issue treasury bonds. They need China to keep buying those U.S. bonds.
How will the globe's number 2 economy perform in the second quarter? We'll keep you updated.
That's all for today's China in Focus on YouTube. We're now sharing a shortened version of our program here after being demonetized for 2 years. Here's what's coming up in our second half. Is the Chinese regime capable of bringing down America's power grid? The secret lies in a special piece of equipment called a power transformer. With it, the flip of a switch sends electricity zooming into our homes and businesses. Without it, we remain in the dark. American Thought Leaders host Yanni Kallik sat down with Tommy Waller, president of the Center for Security Policy, about the hidden danger. The full episode is available on our partner platform, Epoch TV. To sign up, click the link down below. Thanks for watching China in Focus. I'm Tiffany Meyer. See you soon.